Welcome back to another edition of Trades Triumph by way of What's the Play Productions. I'm Christian here with Brian. We are missing SportsFan for this episode. Personal stuff going on, so we're gonna move on without him for this specific episode. Hopefully, he'll be back next week. So shout out to SportsFan as we do this episode in his absence. For today, we have another positional breakdown for you. We're combining two positions once again. We're not combining, but we're doing two positions in one episode once again. The quarterbacks and the edge rushers, two of the most high-profile draft positions in general, right? I think these are probably the two most, outside of offensive line, maybe, positions that go early in the draft for the most part. So it's very convenient. We have the people who are chasing the quarterbacks on the episode with the quarterbacks. So it'll be interesting to see how we rank those edge rushers. We will start off with the quarterbacks, though. For those of you who are new, last year when we did the rankings, we ranked our quarterbacks into tiers based off just how close they were in terms of grades. Because, of course, you can have a QB1, a QB2, a QB3. I mean, we'll still list it out as that. But when you do it in a tier system, you kind of group the prospects instead of necessarily separating them 1, 2, 3, 4. So that way we're able to, there's a cluster of people who we view similarly. And in NFL teams, they run so differently. One team may like what Jalen Milroe brings more than what Shedeur Sanders may bring or what a Jaxson Dart may bring. And they could all have them similarly graded, but depending on what type of system they run, they would pick the quarterback that fits that. So hopefully that helps when we are going through it. We get to the edge rushers, we'll kind of do a similar thing as well. So just be prepared for that. So, to Brian, QBs, your QB1 is?
The QB1 is Cam Ward out of Miami. That is my guy for now. I believe I think he has arguably the strongest arm in this draft. I think there's another guy that we'll touch on later that may have a conversation for that. But I was to say he's my guy. I believe he's a guy that not only has the arm, he has the accuracy, he has the arm talent for sure. He's a guy that can read and progress, read the defense and make progressions. He's definitely improved at every stop he's been at, and he's shown that he's been able to make it work in different offenses. Given that he started Incarnate Word, he was at Washington State, I want to say, and then of course finishing off Miami last year. He's a guy that can make plays outside of the design, as we saw last year. He did a lot of that at times. He also doesn't seem like a guy who's going to be too phased by the moment or even by the city he may be in. So, and he has a great personality from what I've seen. So, right now, right now and going forward, I would have him as my QB1 for sure.
Yeah, for me, I think Cam Ward is one of the prospects who we've seen over the years, kind of similarly to Jaden Daniels, where people were predicting. I think Jaden Daniels, for like the last 3 years of his college career, you would see mock drafts where it was like, is this the year for Jaden Daniels? Is this the year for Jaden Daniels? And then finally, in I believe his 5th year of college, it was finally the year for him to go off, win the Heisman, and then he became a first round pick, offensive rookie of the year. Cam Ward, even since he was at Incarnate Ward, people had eyes on him as a potential transfer quarterback to go D1. And then, of course, once he got to Washington State, for those of you who keep up with preseason draft talk, so the prior season, a lot of times Cam Ward was a name being thrown in as a potential sleeper coming into the season. Then once he finally got to Miami, it was like, okay, this is the year where we finally expect Cam Ward to arrive, finally declare for the draft and submit his name as a top quarterback in college football and a top college prospect. And we kind of finally saw all the pieces put together. When he was at Incarnate Ward, we saw the raw traits, the strong arm, the playmaking out of structure. Washington State, of course, that crazy offense that they run there. We saw all of those pieces as well. And then when he gets to Miami, we saw a little bit more in structure as well as a little bit of the out of structure things that we were expecting from him as well. He's a decent enough athlete. I wouldn't call him a super plus athlete or even a above super average athlete, but I think he's a good enough athlete where he's shown that he can get out of the pocket, make plays out of structure, and he could go pick up a first down for you if he needs to. I really feel like that's all you really. I feel like that's probably the minimum requirement for quarterback in this day and age is to be able to go pick up 10 yards when you have to, get out of the pocket if there's pressure, and make plays once you get out of the pocket and keep your eyes downfield. And I think Cam Ward does a great job of that. Of course, there could be questions about the in structure play, but that is just because it's been limited. But we saw at Miami one of the best seasons of all time, and he was in structure for a good amount of it. The highlights of always every quarterback prospect, the highlights are almost always going to come out of structure. So it's hard to just say and quantify a quarterback's looks as he's doing a lot of stuff out of structure. Can he play in the system? And I think we also have to realize that a lot of college football, outside of the RPOs, the quick game, a lot of this stuff is drop back and pass, and if there's nothing there, you're going to have to do something out of structure. Because a lot of these college teams, just frankly, are not that good. A lot of the O-lines are not that good to hold up to show what a quarterback can do in structure. And a lot of the receivers are not that good to run the best routes to get open as soon as possible. So the best quarterback on the team, the best player on the team being the quarterback, a lot of times he's going to make the play to put his team in position to win. And so Cam Ward was doing that a lot. He is in his own tier for me. And it's kind of close between his tier and the second tier that I have, but I do think he's far and away the most cemented at what he does. That doesn't mean he's a surefire Pro Bowl talent because there are things that, of course, he does need to work on. But I think the other guys have a lot more questions, and I think Cam Moore has a lot more answers to the questions that he had previously in the prior seasons. And so, is he your tier one only quarterback, or do you have another quarterback in tier one?
No, I do have another quarterback in tier one, so we'll go ahead to the my QB2 and Shedeur Sanders. So originally, I did have Cam in his own tier, and I think I was thinking relative to last year in terms of where we were saying Caleb was like in his own tier because he was almost like a generational prospect. Even though we felt like Drake May had was close enough to where that could be a conversation. So I think just purely off the fact that I don't think Cam is like generational, can't miss. Kind of like how like Trevor and Caleb Williams have been in terms of prospects. It was just like I think that Shedeur is still close enough because he's still a guy that even though we would probably say this is a weaker quarterback class, he's a guy that I think that you would still say could be a mid to late first round pick, and he's also a guy that I think that will be a solid pro because I think if he came out 10 to 12 years ago, like he'd be not the prototypical prospect, but he'd be the guy that you're saying is going top 5, top 10 because he's the solid pocket passer that can move a little bit, but you're not expecting him to do too much about the play. Now, I think the positive for him is that he has played behind an offensive line that's been shaky at times, so you're not completely worried about him getting killed the first season. But obviously, you don't want to beat the game out of him, as I think Chris Candy said. And I think the other thing with him is just making sure you don't. And same thing with Cam when you're drafting these guys. I think they'll be good, but I would hope that you don't give them the expectations that they're going to come in like a Jaden Daniels or somebody like that and be the savior right away. Just because, even though I think they are talented quarterbacks, I just don't think that they're going to elevate their teams that much that quickly right away. But with Shedeur, I think I don't have too many issues with Shedeur. I just think that the slight lack of mobility may be, and the arm not being as strong as some of the other prospects might be. It's probably like my only real potential issue with him. But he is a very accurate passer, and I think if he has a guy that you see as a wide receiver one, I think he'll be fine. So. Not too many holes for me that I see in his game, but that's why he's my QB2, and that's why I still have him in the same tier as Cam Ward.
Yeah, I think for me, Shedeur is in my second tier with one other quarterback, and I say that his tier is different from Cam's tier in my eyes. Just because, kind of like you said, where I feel like in most classes, and this class specifically, I think Cam Ward will probably still grade out around the top 10 pick in general. no matter the class. I feel like if he was in last year's class, he would probably be viewed in a similar or higher manner to a J.J. McCarthy. And I think we all came to agreement on J.J. McCarthy probably being a top 10 pick, top 15 pick, top 20 overall prospect. I think Cam Ward would probably be viewed in that same light. I think Shedeur may be benefiting from the class that he's in,
Yeah.
and some of the needs. You look back 2 years ago, C.J. Stroud is they were very similar talking points. I don't want to say they were similar prospects. They were very similar talking points. But I feel like Shedeur does the same things that C.J. Stroud does. Shedeur has similar weaknesses to C.J. Stroud, but I feel like his weaknesses that he shared with Stroud, I feel like he's much weaker in those departments.
Mm.
And so I feel like when it comes to the mobility, I feel like he's probably a little bit less mobile than CJ. When it comes to the arm, CJ doesn't have the greatest arm, but it's good enough. I feel like Shedeur probably also has a good enough arm. And even the strengths. CJ is probably one of the most accurate quarterbacks that have come out in the past few years. Shedeur is also very accurate, but I wouldn't say he's as accurate as CJ. So it's like, and we also did see a game at the highest level, the highest college level, where C.J. Stroud did show some of that improvisation,
Yeah.
which got him, arguably, which got him towards the solidify himself as the top of that draft next to Bryce Young. Because we finally saw it. We were waiting to see C.J. Stroud do something out of structure for the 2-3 years where he was there at Ohio State playing, and everything was just pass, pass, RPO, pass, pass. Once he got under duress, he started making plays out of structure, and it was like, okay, this could be something we could work with, and he solidified himself top 2 pick in the draft. Shedeur, we didn't really get that game, but I don't want to say we didn't get that game because he did have a lot of crazy plays, a lot of crazy highlights. Because, like you mentioned, that O-line he was playing behind for the past 2 years at Colorado was absolutely putrid. But we didn't really see him shred the defense to the same level where C.J. Stroud did against. Who was he playing against? Georgia?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so in the same manner in which that level of defense and C.J. Stroud was still shredding them apart. He was getting beat up, but he was shredding them apart. We saw Shedeur play against some decent teams, but we didn't really see him play against that highest level of competition and rise to the occasion the same way Stroud did. And so that could just be he didn't get to come up against that competition. He played on a weaker team. Another thing that concerns me with Shedeur is the sacks. There's a lot of stuff he will take sacks to avoid lowering his completion percentage. And he also tries to get away from a lot of stuff, and he's not as athletic as he may think he is, and ends up taking turning a 5-yard sack into a 15-yard sack. So that's something that concerns me with Shedeur. But that could be something that's coached out of him, because he has been coached by his father, and so you never know. His dad could just be enabling stuff. But get an NFL coach. Hey, dude, check the ball down, get rid of it, throw it away. We don't care about completion percentage here. You just got to get rid of the ball because these yards matter more than the completion percentage.
Mm-hmm.
So stuff like that is just things that drop him a tier below Cam Ward to me. And I also do question the thing I talked about with Cam Ward. Cam Ward, I know if he gets out the pocket, I'm confident in him getting 10 yards. Shedeur, I'm sure he has occasions where he can go get the 10 yards, but I'm not as confident in him as I am Cam Ward. So it's just comparing them to similar prospects, and it's like I feel like he does things marginally worse. He's probably still a top 20, top 30 prospect in the class just based off his accuracy alone. He's a very accurate quarterback, and that's something you can't teach. So he get around a good offense with a good coordinator, I still think he could have success.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I wish that Colorado would have been able to finish the deal and at least win their conference, so that way we could have seen him in those type of games, like you were saying with C.J. Stroud. But unfortunately, that's something that he missed out on.
One more thing, and this applies to the rest of the quarterbacks as well. I think a lot of teams are going to have to think about how much because like you said, Shedeur is really going to come in this class, and I do think he will just be a steady hand. I don't want to say just a steady hand, but I think he will be a steady hand for a team for the next 10 to 15 years. And that is honestly okay depending on where he's drafted. Because you have Andy Dalton is a success story. Second round pick who is the quarterback of a team for 10 years. Matt Ryan, even though he was second overall pick, he was a steady hand. He had one MVP caliber season. Everything else, he was a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, of course. But I don't want to down Matt Ryan. But he wasn't consistently top 5 quarterback in the league. And
Yeah.
so it's like it's okay to have that steady hand for 10 to 15 years if you can build a competent team around them. But I do think teams are going to have to determine whether they are going to draft for the need at quarterback, or if they are going to, acknowledge that maybe Shedeur isn't the right fit for them at this spot. And that's going for like the top 10 teams. I don't think the Browns should draft Shedeur into their situation. I think the Giants kind of felt the same way, which is why they went out and got Russ Jameis. I don't think they're going to draft Shedeur, at least not at 3. There are some rumors that they could sneak back into the late first, and I would like that a lot more for them. But
Absolutely.
the Giants may feel like they don't want to draft Shedeur at 3 because it's not the best situation, and he does have some clear limitations that you cannot necessarily work around currently because you don't have the roster construction to work around it. And so it's just things like that. Teams are gonna have to figure out, and this isn't just Shedeur. This is for Milroe. This is for Dart. Figure out how much they want to work with a quarterback versus find a bridge, maybe take one next year if they're bad again, or find another bridge and you just continue to until you actually find your guy. Because I think that's the most essential thing. Quarterback is the most essential position on the field, and you have to get it right, especially as like the Titans. New GM, he's now attaching his career to Cam Ward.
Yeah.
Cam Ward doesn't work out. We just saw that what's his name? Carthen, who was the previous GM. I don't even remember if he was on the staff that drafted Levis. I think he took over that year. I don't know if he took over before the draft or after the draft. Either way, his career was attached to Levis. Levis clearly wasn't the success story that he hoped he was. And Carthen got canned before they can even get the first pick in this year's draft game. So you're attaching your name to a quarterback, and so it's just very important that a steady hand for 10 to 15 years. Hopefully that steady hand leads to playoff appearances, or you take a blue chip prospect, a Abdul Carter, a Travis Hunter, a Mason Graham, because there's a lot of the blue chip prospects in this class that you could take, especially if you're these early teams. I didn't even mention the offensive tackles: Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks, like these guys that you could take early, or you take the quarterback who's probably graded about 20 to 30 picks after these prospects. So it's just something that you're gonna have to figure out.
Yeah. So I'll move to the beginning of my tier 2. And I'll talk about my QB3. I wonder if Chris feels the same way.
Brian, you know me, man. You know me, Brian. Come on, Brian. I know what you about to say.
This is one of those times where I'm glad that Jalen isn't here because the hate would really flow. But
Brian, come on, man. You know what I'm about to go over.
So my QB3 is Jalen Milroe out of Alabama.
Swing for the fences. I'm gonna be honest with you, Brian. And all that talking I just did, I never said Shedeur is my QB2. I just wanted that to be known.
Oh, my fault.
He is in my tier 2.
Yeah, he's in your tier 2. My fault.
And I mentioned he was in there with one other quarterback. That one other quarterback is Jalen Milroe. I'll let you talk though.
Hey man, QB expert Mingles, man. We already know. But for me, Jalen Milroe, he's definitely, if nothing else, he's the guy that'll get you 10 yards and get you a first down. If there's nothing else he can do that. But I think I like the fact that he was able to play under the Washington, not the Kalen DeBoer offense, because we saw what that did for Michael Penix the year before. I wish he had another year because I feel like his passing would be even more consistent. So hopefully in the league he could become, his intermediate game will be even more consistent, even better. And I think that's the biggest thing for him. I don't want to be too lazy here and compare and say that, do the ringer thing and be like he's a smaller Anthony Richardson or anything like that. But I do think he will thrive if he is allowed time to, develop. But I feel like he's good at his progressions. I don't think he was, even though that offense is more of a one-read offense, I don't think he was too bad going through his progressions. He takes good care of the ball. Like we said, he can get you a first down when need be. And with the offenses in the league now, with a whole lot of RPOs and West Coast, I think that he'll be fine getting the ball out of his hands and things of that nature. So this is another one where I didn't see too many holes, but I think the biggest thing is just, consistency in the intermediate area, making sure you make your layups throwing wise, and then just, continuing to be good down the field. But I think having Ryan Williams last year definitely allowed him to expand his game more than I'd say the year before when Coach Saban was still there.
Yeah, for Milroe, well, I think the one thing as an analyst, only thing I can be is consistent. And as per the name of this podcast, Traits Triumph, I just fall for the traits, and whether I'm right or wrong, the only thing I can be is consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Milroe has the traits that are needed to succeed in the NFL. And as a person who fell in love with Anthony Richardson as a prospect just a few years ago, kind of like you said, a smaller Anthony Richardson. Except I do think Jalen Milroe is probably day one a better passer, um, just naturally, and I believe the completion percentage shows that. The college completion percentage shows that. Um, I think it's a lot of what you said. The little stuff that does need to be refined. The the natural accuracy that he may not have that needs to be refined. A lot of the stuff over the middle he misses on, and a lot of the layups he misses on, and it's just like you don't know if that's like a focus thing or if it's just a touch thing because he's just not a natural thrower of the ball. He's somebody with a rocket attached to his arm. I mean, attached to his shoulder, and he throws a beautiful deep ball. You were saying Cam Ward probably has the strongest arm, and I think you was probably alluding to Milroe in that conversation as well. But he's the most athletic quarterback in the class, and at the end
Absolutely.
of the day, you'll be able to put him on the field in some sort of capacity, but you'll also hope that he can learn from whoever you have on the roster. That is the one issue that I had with the Colts when they took Anthony Richardson from day one when he was entered into the draft. I was saying, yes, this is my guy, but I would like to see Anthony Richardson go somewhere, and that could have been any team in the NFL could have drafted him, and they still could have sat him. I
Yeah.
don't care who your other quarterbacks were on the roster. You know that you have this project, and they still threw him out there week one, expecting him to look like some Cam Newton variant. And for the few games that he played his rookie season, he looked decent. Then he comes back this year, looked absolutely awful. And I think it's the developmental phase that we need to focus on when it comes to quarterbacks like this. The traits quarterbacks who could pan out down the line, but I think teams want that instant gratification and just oh yeah, we drafted Milroe, and they look so good in training camp that it's almost hard not to play them. But you have to make a conscious decision. If we're drafting him, we're starting a Mason Rudolph. We're starting a Ryan Tannehill. We're starting a bridge quarterback for the entire season, not until Mason Rudolph starts looking bad in week 5. If Mason Rudolph looks bad in week 5, throw in Tim Boyle. That's why he's in the league for it. But there's no reason that we're forcing these quarterbacks into these spots, and then we're surprised when they don't look as good. Everybody and their mother was telling whoever drafted Anthony Richardson they probably shouldn't play week 1. He probably shouldn't. Of course, he's a mobile quarterback. He has a strong arm. You could put together a package of plays, a package of 30 to 40 plays where he can maintain the offense week for a game, 2 games, 3 games. You can put together packages. But in order for this to be your 17-game starter, you have to rely on 17-game consistency. And I think that's a big thing that Anthony Richardson missed out on by not analyzing the process from the sidelines. We saw this past season he got benched, came back in. He had some games where he looked better. Now he has this whole offseason to prove himself. So I'm hoping that whoever drafts Jalen Milroe learns from what the Colts have done with Anthony Richardson. And the Steelers draft him, sit him down. The Steelers, I believe, have Mason Rudolph. Start Mason Rudolph. I don't care if Mike Tomlin's 8-game or whatever the 9-game where he wins
Yeah.
the,
Winning
over
streak. Yeah.
50%. Yeah, that streak. I don't care if that gets broken. You have to make a decision for the long term of your franchise. And so Jalen Milroe, long term decision. It's not an instant decision. You're not going to get his best football at the age of 23. And so I think that's just the thing that teams have to understand. But
I
I love him as a prospect, but I just don't love him as a week 1 starter. But he's my 2, just for the hopes of what he could be.
no, I agree with
High
that.
ceiling.
High ceiling in the class for sure, for sure. I was just gonna say, like you said, because you made me think of another quarterback when you brought up packages. I think that at least in his first season, if you want to keep him involved, maybe do like a Trey Lance thing where he's like inside the red zone goal line type guy. Maybe not run him as much as Trey, so that way he can start working on going through progressions and stuff. But that was the person I was thinking of when you were talking about packages, and also he was able to sit behind Jimmy Garoppolo, if I'm not mistaken, for a season. So if you're able to do that kind of structure, so that way he can kind of get his legs under him, but while also not being asked to carry, well, not carry the offense, but you know what I mean, like run the offense for 17 games, like you said. I think that's probably the best thing for him right now, in terms of his long term future. But I agree with you. I believe he does have the highest ceiling in the class, especially if everything comes together in the right situation.
I mean, I don't, especially where he's projected to go. I feel like that's the perfect like late first, early second where a team could potentially trade up. I feel like that's the right spot for a team to take a chance. Late first means probably a playoff team who's drafting him to either sit behind a established starter or sit behind a bridge quarterback, i.e. the Steelers' case, or early first, maybe a team who didn't love a quarterback round one come back around. Well, Milroe's still here, and it's hard to say no to a Milroe. So a team like that, I would have said the Raiders, but they just extended Geno.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of awful teams that could use a quarterback potentially. So Milroe will go, and Milroe will hopefully have the proper developmental system behind him and give him some time. I've been yearning for the Rams to take a quarterback for the last few years, and so Matthew Stafford, I think he maybe has 2 years left. Sean McVay, I believe in you to get Milroe right on track, but whoever takes him, please just do the process the right way, so I don't look stupid again.
Yeah, the Rams aren't a bad idea. They're definitely not a bad idea. So,
But you might still be in your tier 2.
yeah, one more person in my tier 2. So that guy's my QB4, and that's Jaxson Dart. At first, again, kind of like I said before, I had the separation between him and Milroe, but I think just the potential, and maybe I'm falling for it like the rest of the scouts, but I think because he's so young and he has that potential, as a passer, I think that it's enough to talk yourself into taking him in the late first round, maybe early second, kind of like Jalen Milroe. So the biggest thing for me with Jaxson, for what I saw on tape, kind of like you said about Shedeur, is just kind of knowing when to give up on a play, and also understanding when to sense pressure, so that way you're not taking 5-10 yard sacks or potentially getting strip sacked. But he's got the arm talent. He looks like he can make all the throws. I think he's got a good command of the offense. Playing under Lane Kiffin, I think that helped, because I think he still was fine at USC, but I don't think he would have been the prospect that he is if he hadn't gone to Lane Kiffin. So I think that has helped his game as well. Yeah, so not too much to say about him, honestly. But the biggest things, I think, and he's mobile, but again, he's probably not a guy he's a guy that you may want running on like 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, but 3rd and 10, it may be, he may have to wiggle and get past somebody to get that first down. So I think he's just got to be more consistent as a passer, as we've said about the last few guys. And again, I think it's just understanding when to give up on a play. So I think once you're able to get that out of him, I think he'll be able to be a little bit more consistent, and probably, as you said about Shedeur before, that could be taught, that could be coached out of him potentially. He could become the quarterback that you need him to be. But
I think for Jaxson Dart, the one thing I do like is you mentioned how young he is. I believe he's only like 21, but he's played a lot of football.
yeah.
He came in as a freshman at USC. I believe I don't know if he started from week 1, but I believe he came in and played a decent amount at least. Then once he transferred, I believe he was a starter for Ole Miss for at least the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quinshon Judkins was at Ole Miss when he started.
Yeah, so he's played a decent amount of football, so it's not a young quarterback who only has 1 year of film. The thing with Dart is and it's kind of similar to Shedeur while not being the exact same. Where I don't know exactly what he does exceptional.
Yeah.
His arm is stronger than Shedeur, of course, but outside of that, there's just games where he just looks like a regular guy. Like he looks like any other college quarterback sometimes. And that's really not what you want to see from a potential first round caliber pick. Um, and so like he'll have games where good game for a college football quarterback, but it doesn't stand out. It doesn't lift up his team to the level where it needs to. And then he'll also have the game next week where he puts up 400 yards, 5 touchdowns, and just looks like why is this guy not being talked about first round? And so I think that's the Jaxson Dart. I'm not gonna say he's inconsistent, but I think some days he's regular, and then other days he's a superstar. And it's like the what's the real version? What could he potentially become? And I think that's a whole nother conversation. And I think he's in my third tier, but he's not that far off from where I have Sanders and Milroe. Just because I do think he could have a similar ceiling to both of them, which I can see where he's a steady hand at quarterback for the next 10, 15 years. Or I could also see the alternate reality where he becomes a Pro Bowl quarterback for 10 years. Maybe a Derek Carr level quarterback. Not the super athlete, but mobile enough to extend a play. Good arm, decent accuracy, and I think if you take a Derek Carr level quarterback where Derek Carr was taken, I think the Raiders probably deem that a success considering where they came from. And so whoever takes Dart, if that's what you end up with, I take that. But I just don't know if that's what you're getting. You could be looking at the Ole Miss offense and looking at the RPOs and not knowing if he knows how to read a defense yet, if he's trusting his eyes on the throws, or if he's just a beneficiary of what's around him. So Dart is Dart. I mean, I don't. Great quarterback name though. I just don't really have much on him because it's just for someone who plays so much football, it just we really just don't know. Yeah, he had his best season his last year, and that's what he was supposed to do. But it's almost like a contract year, you know. Everybody knew you was probably gonna have to come out in this draft anyway, buddy. Because if you didn't perform, that portal was gonna be calling your name, and that portal was gonna be singing to Ole Miss's ears at that point. But he's my definitive QB4, and he's honestly alone in tier 3.
Okay.
It was close between him and my fourth tier because I'm just going to 5 quarterbacks because the last few. I'm not talking about Quinn Ewers today. I can't do it. Don't want to talk about Quinn Ewers. They showed that pro day clip where that ball was spinning like this. He just needs to. He should have gone back to school, but we've talked about that before.
Well, unfortunately, that was the beginning of my tier 3. I only have 2 quarterbacks in there, but yeah, Quinn's my QB5. I think it's just he
played a lot.
Yeah,
he played a lot too.
Plenty of experience. Definitely has an arm for sure. That was him, Milroe, and Cam would be the 3 guys I probably say have the strongest arms in the draft. We've talked about this before. Obviously, his biggest weakness is under pressure. He just panics, and it's just I don't think that's something that can be coached out of you. So I don't see him going earlier than maybe mid-second round. I did want to ask you, since you are a QB expert, if a team like, even though they have a starter in place, if a team like, well, I guess I'll throw the Rams on there too since they're a West Coast team, but if a team like Miami or San Francisco drafted him, do you think, given the weapons that they have, especially Miami, given the weapons, do you think he's a guy that could for Miami specifically, do you think he could raise the ceiling on their offense just because of his ability to throw the ball down the field?
That's not what I thought you was going to ask me. I thought you was going to ask if he could do similar things. I don't think he raises the ceiling, though, just because of what you just said. Like, under pressure, and I think the under pressure thing for Quinn Ewers applies in more than one meaning. Like, yeah, under pressure when the offensive line gives up some heat. But also, big game, big moments. Quinn Ewers has struggled in college football as well. So that form of under pressure as well. He has not looked the best. He has not looked the most poised, and I think that's a key word when it comes to quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I think that's been another issue for Tua. So I think that's something similar. Brock Purdy, I think, is probably a much better option in terms of the ceiling for the 49ers. But the 49ers, I don't know what he's going to look like without the whole gamut of options that he had. Of course, Debo's gone now. Ayuk, I don't know when he's coming back. And then Kittle is not doing anything except getting older. McCaffrey, don't know when he's coming back. So I don't know what Purdy looks like without the weapons. So given the current weapons, I wouldn't want to send Jaxson Dart to a situation like that. I think Miami is a fair question. But once again, I think he may have a. It's circumstantial because Tua, I don't like Tua, but he is still one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league. But we've seen Tua struggle mightily once it gets past November
Yeah.
and he's on the road. So it's debatable whether Ewers has more success in sub 30-degree weather or not. But I mean, if a team like that drafts him, then could see him because Tua misses 13. I mean, not 13. He misses at least 3 to 4 games a year. So we'd see Ewers if and hope maybe he gets to December and it's like, oh well, Ewers went 15 for 23 and Tua normally goes 9 for 19 when it's 20 degrees. So who knows? But I wouldn't necessarily say he would raise the ceiling on a Miami Dolphins team. I think best case scenario for Quinn Ewers is he is a Tua Tagovailoa level of quarterback, where he can fool people into thinking that he could be in top 10 conversations. But the real people who watch the game will know that he's probably benefiting from what's around him while still keeping his team afloat. And I think that's the perfect way to describe Tua. I think Purdy kind of surpassed that slightly, but again, we haven't seen him without the material. So we're really going to see Purdy, especially if they give him that contract, because it's only going to get worse down the line because they're going to have to cut people, trade people, all that type of stuff. I believe in Purdy just slightly more than Tua, but if Ewers can get to that tier, then I believe that's probably a career success for him, especially with the money that he would be able to make.
For sure. No, I appreciate that answer. I thought about Miami specifically, kind of like you said, because I feel like especially when we get later and like playoffs come, like we watched that Kansas City game where it felt like you have Tyreek and Jalen running in motion for like 2-yard completions. So my question is just more of, do you think that he's a guy that at least, maybe because he's a little bit taller and a little bit bigger, he's at least a guy that you think you may be able to get to throw over the middle a little bit more, maybe get 5 to 10 yards here instead of it being like 2 yards here, 2 yards there. Because just doing all that eye candy just for 2 yards a gain is just like it's tough to win like that in the playoffs unless you're running the football at like 5-6 yards a clip.
Miami's never going to have success in the playoffs unless they are like the 1 seed. Because anytime they're going to have to go on the road, you got to think about it. They go on the road. They're going on the road to Kansas City. They're going to Buffalo. They're going to Baltimore. They're going to Cincinnati. It's like all the AFC's best teams are in cold locations. Like unless the Chargers get good to the point where they're getting home games, I can't think of an AFC team that's not in the cold. So it's like
them in Vegas. That's about it.
Yeah, I'm not a believer in Vegas. Even Denver. Denver's on the come up. Denver's going to be cold in the like. Yeah. I don't know what Miami's going to do to the point where they could just find a way for Tua to get past these demons. And none of these teams playing domes. They all play outdoors. I don't know what they're going to do. They have to get a 1 seed in order to like. And then they got to hope when they get to the Super Bowl that the NFL don't do nothing weird and go to like New York again.
Exactly.
Like. They got it has to be the perfect outcome, the perfect scenario for them to make sure that they have success with Tua as quarterback.
Yeah.
But we don't got to talk too much on Tua because I could go on a whole spiel on how he's failed upwards. He created a whole college career off of Jalen Hurts'
nice throw to Devontae.
Hey, whole college career. He gained so much aura from that one throw.
Man,
they was predicting him to win the Heisman every year after that. Never did. But that's Tua. My QB5, and he's in the tier below. And this may be a surprise to some of the viewers because they may be expecting like a Will Howard or like we said, a Quinn Ewers. But I have Tyler Shough. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. From Louisville.
Yeah.
Decent quarterback. all things considered, he only played really 1 year, but he's older, so he's been around a lot of quarterback rooms. So that's probably his biggest downside is he only has 1 year of film. And for him to be my tier 4, I really view these tiers as like not the rounds I would draft them, but that's probably the round I would grade them. And so he'd probably be my for sure tier 4. Yeah. And so that'd be a 4th round grade. And I think worst case scenario, I think you got a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
But I do think that this could potentially be a guy where we didn't get to see his best football because he only played 1 year. In the 1 year that he did play at Louisville, he looked like a very competent, very decent quarterback. But it's like, why weren't you playing before? So a lot of teams may question that, why he wasn't able to beat out whoever was in front of him at his other schools. I believe he transferred one or two times before landing at Louisville. So that could also be a question, like why did you stick it out, or why did you beat out, or why did you pick a better school, better opportunity? But good throw of the ball, pretty accurate. Not the strongest arm, but decently strong enough. Pretty mobile, able to hit most of the throws that you really need to see a quarterback hit. Just hasn't played in those same big time moments that we saw from like a Quinn Ewers or a Will Howard, but he also didn't have the same big time moment failures that we saw from a Quinn Ewers. So we're in the 4th tier. No need to play it safe. Just Alex Shaw. It's a interesting film from him. Interesting developments. I would probably have Will Howard 6 if I really put any thought into the rankings, but Quinn Ewers maybe 7. I gotta look though. I gotta look. Hold on. I'm gonna actually look. You can start talking. I'm gonna check.
Yeah. So Tyler's my QB6, and he's the other guy in my tier 3 that I had. I haven't seen the most film on him, so I there's only so much I can say. But he did look good, especially against like Miami and Clemson. Those were the 2 games I was able to catch up with. Like you said, older guy. He's been in a lot of room, so he's probably had to master a few offenses. So I think he's a guy that that'll probably crush the interviews when they ask him, when they do like the favorite play thing, and they ask him to ask him about verbiage and stuff like we saw with the quarterbacks in the offseason Hard Knocks last year. Yeah, I think this is a guy that probably. I mean, he's been rising on some people's boards. I heard his name a lot more as we've gotten further in the draft season. He may be a guy that maybe you put behind an established quarterback, and he's a guy that you may feel that can win you some games. So he may be behind, say, a Stafford, like we said before, or a Purdy, or somebody that's established, but also if something were to happen to them, you were like, okay, he can hold the fort down for a couple of games without us having to be too worried.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's anything wrong with drafting your quarterback in the 4th or 5th round. Drafting your backup quarterback in the 4th or 5th round. He could go somewhere and just like a situation like the Bengals, where you don't want to pay a backup quarterback too much money, and then you just have some insurance, or you have someone decent around, and just in the event that Joe Burrow goes down for 2 games or so, who can go in, play 2 games, and if he looks good in the 2 games, you can upsell on the investment that you made. You potentially get a 4th or 3rd round pick. Somebody may be willing to take a risk or a chance on him. That's all I got for quarterback, man.
Yeah, same here. So we'll move to the edge side. The defensive side of the ball. Go with the edges. I think. Well, I have only one guy in my tier 1, but
yes.
Okay, certainly. So we both only have one guy in our tier 1. I think this is where, like as we've said before, this is where the separation is, and I'll explain a little bit more. But yeah, this is the guy that I'm going to have as my number 1 prospect on the big board. I think he's probably 2 on yours, but
yeah.
But we have Abdul Carter as our edge 1. Just a disruptive force of nature. He's a very versatile individual. And like I'll talk about with another edge later, he's a guy that you could either play as an edge or as an off-ball guy. Kind of like, and I know this is going to be a very lazy comparison, but like kind of like how Micah Parsons was like coming into the draft, where you had him as an edge rusher and a guy that could also play linebacker. So He's just a guy that you can use as a weapon, in that front seven. And obviously he's going to be a guy that you have to account for on the offensive side of the ball. A lot of people have mocked him to the Browns, so I think he would be in the early defensive rookie of the year conversations because you got Myles Garrett on the other side of you, and obviously you can't have him go one on one against guys. So it'll be interesting to see where he lands. But for me, he's my prospect one. He's a guy that I think is going to come and dominate the league day one, no matter what team he's on, and it's just sky's the limit for him in my mind.
Yeah, Abdul. I don't think much really needs to be said. Everybody has heard a lot about Abdul Carter. Went to Penn State, wore 11. That's really all you really need to know. But lightning fast, lightning first step. The only real concerns people have for him is size, but Micah Parsons is kind of like Von Miller. Micah Parsons have quieted the size concerns. As long as he puts in the effort in the run game, I don't really see an issue with the size. He doesn't really seem to have an issue with translating speed to power. And then, like you were saying, if you put him on a team like the Browns, it might get bad because you literally can't not double Myles Garrett. And so he's going to see single teams his entire until Myles Garrett leaves. He will see single teams for like the first 3 to 5 years of his career. Plus, and so he could have some crazy sack numbers off the rip just by going against left tackles by himself, going against right tackles by himself. Then they start doubling him. They can't not. I mean, they double him. They can't double Myles Garrett as well. So it's going to be very difficult. I mean, even if you get him to a team like the Giants, the
Yeah,
Giants could potentially decide that this is a prospect that they want, opposite of Brian Burns. The Kayvon Thibodeau experiment has been just that. It's been an experiment. He's had some decent years. He's had some pretty mediocre years. He's not an Abdul Carter level prospect. So the Giants deem that that's where they want to go. Him opposite of Brian Burns, he'd probably see more double teams than Brian Burns would eat. It's like Dexter Lawrence is in the middle. Then they got to determine who do you want to double, Dexter Lawrence or Abdul Carter. Then Brian Burns on the other. Honestly, Brian Burns getting single coverage every single time.
yeah.
Dexter Lawrence or Abdul Carter, I don't know how you decide. And then who's y'all have a new defensive coordinator now though, right?
Yeah, Shane Bowen. He was the Titans defensive coordinator a few years ago.
Now, see, if y'all still had Wink, I would be very scared. But y'all don't have
Man,
Wink no more. But I'm sure Shane Bowen can figure out some stuff. But he probably doesn't need to. You probably don't need to blitz as much when you got Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, Dexter
Dexter
Lawrence, and
Lawrence. Yeah.
even you still keep Thibodeau to rotate through. So wherever Abdul Carter goes, I'm sure he'll have plenty of success. Micah Parsons level prospect. I think Michael Parsons probably paved the way and helped him out a little bit because we think people were kind of lower. I'm not going to say low because he still went, 11, 12. A little lower on Parsons just because I guess people were scared of the versatility. They didn't know what he was at a certain point. Even the Cowboys, once he got there, he didn't really start playing true edge rusher until the second year. Like he was still rushing the passer the first year, but he was still an off-ball linebacker who would still do off-ball linebacker things. Then he would really rush on second, obvious passing downs, obvious second passing downs, obvious third downs. But then coming into the second year, he was a full-time edge rusher. So I think teams didn't know where to put him, and so I think Abdul Carter, he literally is taking the same path that Micah Parsons took, converted off-ball linebacker to a full-time edge rusher. Um, Teams will probably just determine, yeah, we'll just throw you full-time edge rusher day one, and then if we need to drop you in coverage just to uh, confuse people, we can do that because you've shown that you have the ability to also cover. So I think probably one of the safer picks in the draft. Only reason he's not one for me is just because Travis Hunter is Travis Hunter. But you gotta. I think if you view Travis Hunter as just a wide receiver or just a cornerback, Abdul Carter is definitely number one. But if you view Travis Hunter as the wide receiver and corner, then you have a debate. And even then, it's not for sure for most people. Like Brian has Abdul number one. But for me, it's just Travis, the versatility, both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
Ooh. We continue with the edge rushers.
All right. So the beginning of tier 2 for me, kind of more like a tier 1.5 because of Abdul Carter's not here. I think Edge 2, and arguably Edge 3 on my list are both considered maybe top 5, top 10. Well, definitely top 10, but probably potentially top 5 picks, top 8 depending on the year they're in. If Abdul's not in, so my edge two. Well, I guess I'll do my 2 and 3 now, but I'll space it out a bit. But my 2 and 3 are Jalen or not Jalen. Yeah, no, Jalen Walker, and Markel Williams, both out of Georgia. So
Interesting. You like a
yes,
little you big into versatility this year, huh?
definitely with Jalen. Well, yeah, with both of
That's
them honestly, but with Jalen for
honestly, yeah.
but with Jalen for sure, because I think, and this is gonna sound real lazy, but I think he's not the prospect that Abdul Carter is, but like he has the same versatility, so to speak, because he's a guy that I think can be good off the edge. I won't say dominant, but he's also a guy that you can move. Again, you can move around and be that off-ball linebacker as well. That can make plays sideline to sideline and do things of that nature. So I think it's just about how a team, if he gets to the right team, how a team would use him. The other issue is, of course, he played at Georgia, so he wasn't. He wasn't. I don't think he. Yeah, he wasn't talked about like the other guy. Like obviously, um, a guy like Abdul would be, because Abdul was the guy, like basically coming in his first year. But of course, Jalen had to sit behind guys that have obviously been drafted and are playing well in the NFL now. So for Jalen, that would be my thing with him. With Michael, again, as you said, Chris, he's a very versatile guy. He's a guy that you could definitely play inside, given his height and his size. I think he's a guy that will probably, like, if he's on a 3-4 team, he may be. They may try to sneak him at 3-4 DN, depending on what his weight is. But I think he's a guy that'll probably end up on the edge and end up being a specialty pass rusher, where he may be an inside guy, especially if they run like NASCAR packages. But he's an athletic guy for sure. He's good from what I've seen on tape. I think if he could put a move or two, if he can get like a move or two, he could definitely be an edge for not a permanent edge, but he'll be a solid edge outside. So I both of those guys, I just think that their versatility is what put them over my final guy in the tier 2 tier this year. But yeah, I think both of those guys will probably go top 10, top 15, and I think it may be. But I think even situation wise, I think they should be fine, just because again they have that versatility. So I think they'll be able to stick in the league, even if they aren't as dominant as say Abdul is day one.
Yeah, for me, for my second tier, it starts off with Michael Williams as well. Just as a somebody who studies draft prospects, I love versatility. Michael Williams, like you kind of alluded to, 3-4 end, 4-3 end. Even in a pinch, 3-4 outside linebacker if he has to. Freakishly long, freakishly athletic, and is able to win rushing the passer. I think he'll probably be able to develop into one of the best run defenders in the league, which is something I'm really starting to value a lot more when studying edge prospects. Um, so yeah, that's really why I have him ahead of Jalen Walker, just because Jalen Walker is also in this tier for me. But he'll also be in the linebacker episode if we do one. Because I feel like he could have a very similar career path, not the necessarily the success to a Micah Parsons, where a team may just decide to use him as an off ball linebacker for year one. If that doesn't work, fully convert him to edge rusher year two. But I do think a lot of teams may have him on their board as an actual linebacker, and so that may sway his success year one.
Mm.
But I think based off his athleticism, he tends to lean edge rusher. Based off his size, though, he tends to lean linebacker. He does struggle a little bit in the run game, so I could see why teams may want to start him off as off ball. But I don't love his coverage as a linebacker, so I really prefer him to be an edge rusher. But whatever he does, I feel like he'll have success just because of the type of athlete he is. Back to Michael Williams, I think if he develops into one of the better run defenders in the league, I think he'll still be able to win as a pass rusher. I'm more intrigued by the traits that he would have in the run game.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think just based off the athlete that he is, I think he's like 6'6", 280, 275, something like that. That just screams elite run defender
Yeah.
off the edge. And like you said, depending on what type of team drafts him, if he goes to a 3-4 team, he may have to get up to 285, and I'm sure he could do that and be one of the best 3-4 ends in the league, rushing the passer, stopping the run. And that's the type of versatility you need from a 3-4 end. So that's why I have him as my second edge rusher in the class. My third guy, I don't want to spend too much time on him, but just because he got some allegations going around. But Mike Green had a lot of success as a pass rusher, so he's also in this tier for me. And I think you saw his draft stock soaring prior to those allegations coming out. Um, he did go to a smaller school, but the pass rush wins are there. He is a little bit undersized, I want to say. Maybe like 6'3", 250. That's what he looks like. Let me check.
Yeah.
Yeah, 6'4", 248. So, but he's still an explosive athlete. The 6'4" makes me feel a little bit more comfortable. He may have to bulk up a little bit because I don't want to say he's a nothing in the run game because that's what like the conversation was initially. But I think he's just average in the run game, at least and that was in college. So NFL could get a lot worse than average. So I'm hoping that he continues to improve on that. Because if he gets washed off the field in the run game, he just won't play on first down at all, and that's just not what you want to draft in the first round. But I'm hoping that he can put on some more size, get better in the run game, because the pass rush stuff is there. And so as a pure pass rusher, he might be right behind Abdul as a pure pass rusher, just because I like his pass rush stuff more than Michael. I just like Michael's athleticism and traits more
Yeah.
than Mike. But those three are my tier two. Mike Hill, Mike Green, and Jalen Walker.
Okay. So I have Mike Green as the beginning of my tier 3. He's my edge 5. I'll give my edge 4 in a second, but the reason I think part of the reason why I like his tape. I like his tape. I think part of the reason why I don't have him higher just because like outside of the was it the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl, one of those two? That's when he like really started to
I think it was Senior Bowl. I think.
okay. That's when he really started to like gain not ex- gain exposure, I guess, for lack of a better term. So like he was starting to shoot up draft boards. Um, Strictly talking football, none of the allegation stuff or anything like that. I think that he's a good prospect. I don't know if I would draft him. I just don't know if I would draft him before my edge 4, only because I just think that the edge 4 is a little bit more potential. Um, but I think he's a guy that probably I would take late. Honestly, with as deep as his edge class is, maybe mid first, but like, well, no, not even mid first, probably like late first, early second. But I think if he were to fall to a team like say Detroit with Aiden Hutchinson coming back, I think he'd be fine. Especially because of how good Aiden is in the run game. So they would definitely force him day one to have to be, able to stop the run and contain things. So, but I think he'll be a good prospect. We hope that the allegations and everything are behind him and everything. But yeah, so he's my edge 5, my edge 4. And the final person in my tier 2, I'm gonna I'll call this the Ollie Gordon effect, given what we talked about in the running back episode. CT. Now this may lead to CT turning his camera off, but my edge 4 is James Pearce Jr. from Tennessee.
I'm not mad. I'm not mad at you for that. I mean, not my cup of tea, but I have him 5 or 6. I gotta look again. But I'm not mad at that.
Okay, so the reason why for me with this edge 4, I think it's kind of like how we had the conversation we were talking about Chop Robinson versus Jerry Verse last year. It's something about that speed, man. I feel like now I do think he needs to be a little bit better against the run, and that's partially why I knocked him down. Outside of obviously Michael and Jalen's versatility, but the speed is there. It seemed like he had good moves on tape. He was He was pretty good last year. I don't think he was as dominant as he was the year before, when people were saying he might have been, he had an opportunity to be the first pick or top 5, things of that nature before we came into the season. So, like you said about Ollie Gordon, I think the tools are still there. I think the guy that was expected to go that high is still there. And I think we may be able to see it right away, regardless of what team he plays for. But yeah, I think it's just I guess we are Trace Triumph, so I guess it's not crazy, but yeah, it's just even without that 40 time, I just think that speed is something that it's undeniable on tape. Now, of course, you have to find a way to use it to your advantage in the NFL, because obviously everybody's fast. Everybody's running 4.4 to 4.5s. Like, you got offensive linemen that are probably running like 4.5s, 4.6s. So obviously speed is not the only thing you need to have. But like I said, I think he was able to use his speed and also had a few moves to play off of that. So it will be interesting to see how he looks day one, especially depending on what team drafts him. But I think he's a guy that will what's the word? That will justify where he gets picked.
Yeah, for James Pearce, I think the thing that will give him the earliest success in the league is if he's used in a similar way to how he was in college. In college, at least this past year, I think this is again like preseason conversation, like he was kind of alluding to. I think in the past years, he has been in a rotation in Tennessee where he was rotating as a pass rusher. And I guess people assumed that coming into this year, that rotation would just end. And he would be of course, the star pass rusher. But that rotation continued. I think he even played like less than 50% of the snaps on defense. But I think that's where he will have success. I think we saw in the Super Bowl. I mean, the team that made the Super Bowl, they had Nolan Smith, and he's a situational pass rusher. I'd be surprised if he had played over 50% of the snaps. But that's where he was best at, getting spot snaps, not having to play in the run game. But you do lose something by not having that person, of course, on the field in the run game. So that's why James Pearce, I would have 5 or 6. Let me ask you: do you have a Shemar Stewart as an edge or a defensive lineman?
I think I had him ranked as an edge. Let me check my thing to make sure, but I believe I had him as an edge because they listed him as an edge. Yeah, I have him as an edge. So I have
All
him
right.
and his teammate both as edges.
Okay. So Shamar Stewart's an edge. I have James Pearce 6 because I have Shamar Stewart 5. That is strictly traits. Shamar Stewart 6'6", 290, 4'5". I don't have to say anything else.
Got to believe it.
Yeah, it's not he could suck for all I know, but 6'6", 290, 4'5'9", 40 time. Figure it out. Somebody figure out how to get him on the field. Figure out how to get some production out of him as a 3-4 end. Hopefully, this is kind of like the Darius Robinson thing, except if Shamar Stewart actually wanted to be an edge, I believe he could be just because of 4.59. Darius Robinson didn't have that. I think Darius Robinson ran like a 4.88, 4.9. Yeah, dude, you're a 3-4 end. You're a defensive tackle. Enjoy it. Shamar Stewart, I think he should be a 3-4 end, but if a 4-3 team drafts him and he has to play edge, oh no, we got a 4-5 guy at the edge. He's just 290 pounds. But he gets to a good coach, I think he'll figure it out. But James Pearce, I think as edge 6 in the class, as a situational pass rusher, at least early in his career, because I don't know if he'll be good against the run day 1, day 2, season 1, season 2. Just like Nolan Smith has not been great against the run season 1, season 2 yet. But for James Pearce, situational pass rusher, like you said, the speed will win at certain points. So to have him around that late first to early second round, depending on the team, if I'm the Commanders, I wouldn't take him round 1 because you need a starting edge rusher.
Yeah.
So you can't just. That's like drafting Dante Fowler again, almost, because Dante Fowler, yeah, he gave you 10 sacks, but he played less than 50% of the snaps in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because he can't defend against the run, at least not immediately. And so you got James Pearce out there, like you kind of said, maybe he goes to a Lions, where yeah, they have Aiden Hutchinson, and they can probably find a good enough edge rusher on the other side to supplement the time that James Pearce may not be able to be on the field against the run. Edge 6, I feel like there's a fair ranking for him on my board. I'm not mad at you. I think you said you had him edge 4. I'm not opposed to that. I think he has the upside to live up to an edge 4 billing, especially if he's not going to like late first, early second.
Yeah.
I think if he goes to a team like the Eagles, though, we're in trouble. Because they're just gonna do the whole thing over again.
Yeah, I was gonna say
they're gonna throw him out there at the same time.
Say it again, my fault.
I said they're gonna throw him out there at the same time. James Pearce and Nolan
Smith. Yeah.
Just a bunch of speed.
I would like to see him with a team like Baltimore because they're pretty good at stopping the run. So, but the question would be, do you see Owe and Van Noy? What is Kyle Van Noy still there, or did they?
I don't know, but I'm sure if they wanted him back, he'll find a way back there. Let me check.
But I think the question at that point would be, do you see Owe or one of the other edges as your bona fide edge one from day one, with Pearce coming in? But the reason why I say Baltimore is because they're pretty good against the run year in and year out.
So Van Noy's still on the Ravens.
Okay. Yeah, but that was the thought behind potentially Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, get him somewhere where they got 2 starters and he can just rotate.
Yeah,
I don't see no issue with that. But you had any? I think that's 6 edge rushers for me. You got?
Yeah, the only other 2 guys I had, as you said before, Shemar Stewart, and then I had Nick Skouerton. They were in my tier 3 as well. I don't have too much to say about them right now, but I think they're guys that if you get them in the second or the third round, I mean, I think both of them have potential to be solid players. Maybe within a rotation, but I mean they may be able to stand alone as well. But yeah, those are the 2 guys. I guess you can call them. I mean, I guess we can call them sleepers, but I don't know if I would. But again, I don't know if people would translate those as sleepers.
Yeah, I mean, some of these sleepers could go as early as round 2. I mean, this is a pretty deep edge class. Like Landon Jackson, guy like out of Arkansas. And then you got Boston College guy. He's getting round 1 buzz.
Donovan. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he could go round 1, early round 2, and then you got what's his name? Ohio State.
Jack or JT?
JT, not Jack. Oh heck no, not Jack. JT, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because I feel like last year if he would have declared, he was going round 1, but I feel like we haven't heard a lot from him this year.
Yeah.
It's like the Ollie Gordon effect all over again. You should have left. You would have been a first round pick, but he got the national championship out of it. So is what it is. But he's another guy I like. I think he'll late round 2, early round 3. If that's a guy, a team could take a chance on, develop into a situational pass rusher as well. Let me check, see if there's any names I'm missing that I haven't said.
I know they said like Prince out of Ole Miss, but I haven't seen enough tape on him to.
Yeah, I haven't seen much. I'm trying to find a deep cut. Yeah, I'm not finding one. Yeah, none of these names are resonating after. Oh well. Shout out to Ethan Downs out of Oklahoma. Boomer Sooner. But yeah, if that's all you got, we can wrap up.
Yeah.
Well, once again, another edition of Trace Triumph. We appreciate you all watching. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And tell a friend to tell a friend. Tell your mother, tell your dad, tell your girlfriend, tell your boyfriend, whatever you got. Tell them to like, share, and subscribe to What's the Play Productions. And be sure to stay tuned for the next play.